There was a Jewish comedian named David Steinberg who not many know about. Some, I hope. He would start with biblical jokes. That was part of his shtick. I think more should know about him. He would start up about how Moses would be out with his flock, out with the sheep, and God would call out to him, "Moses!" And the young Moses was not yet a prophet, and he'd look this way, and he'd look that way, and he couldn't find God, so he'd look in the sheep's mouth. Of course, nothing there. So God would try again, "Moses, come toward the burning bush. Take off your shoes, for you stand on holy ground." And Moses would get to the burning bush, take off his shoes and burn his feet, and God would say, "Third one today." And with Moses' feet burned, he swore. He shouted at the top of his lungs something. We're not exactly sure what he said in that moment, but most scholars believe it was the first mention of Jesus Christ in the Bible. Jesus Christ, God. So finally, Moses, it's a great routine, turns to God, he says, "When the people of Israel ask, 'Who should I say sent me?' And God just shakes his head and goes, 'It's whom? Whom should I say sent me?' God says, 'I am that I am,' and Moses just says, 'I forget it.'" It's easy to forget how important it is for there to be laughter echoing from the walls of a sanctuary, with the heaviness of the liturgy, with the heaviness that we bring into this space from a year that was tough in many ways for most of us, with the solemnity of the day, everybody dressed up. It's easy to forget what we put right here so that we'll never forget. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha. You know what that means? Happy are those who dwell in your house. It's easy to forget the principle, Ivdu et Hashem besimcha, that if you're serving a God, if you're doing a mitzvah, if you're coming to shul, it should be something that's on a deep level. Fills you with joy, fills you with pride, fills you with connection. If you're coming to shul, if you're engaged in Jewish life, and it feels like a burden, and it feels like, I'm just here because Bubby would have wanted it. If that's you, okay, but we have what to work on. We have what to talk about because of what it says there, Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, to come to the sanctuary with a sense of joy, with a lightness. We're here serving God. We're here connected as a community. We're here together after years of being apart. We're here and we should fill this sanctuary at times in a respectful way with laughter, I believe. We know that can't be everything, though. Judaism, that's all about laughter, that's all about joy, that's all about feeling good. And so many religious books, if you go to Barnes & Noble and look at the self-help section, you'll see so many titles. How to feel better, how to never worry, how to never have anxiety, how to never be depressed. It's all about just feeling good. But we don't have that. If your Judaism is just about Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, if it's just about coming here with joy, well, then it's a little shallow. Then it's a faith that's immature. Then it's a faith that doesn't understand that our Torah, our community, is meant also to lift us in the moments when we need to be lifted most. Our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents, they came to this very space with laughter and joy and simcha, but they brought their tears too. Just like Moses carried the bones of Joseph when Joseph died into the land of Israel, we carry a lot. We carry a heaviness of a year that had illness, that had pain, that had loss, that had disappointments, the disappointments of life that we bring into this new year. And so, laughter and tears. Right? Isn't that the Jewish experience? Laughter and tears. You know, it's before words are even spoken, that laughter and tears that come from that deepest place. You hear it right now. That's what connects us to God. Maybe even more than the words of the Machzor, that deep, primal place of yearning, of feeling good, of feeling discouraged. That's the connection. And the genius of our tradition is that it speaks to this roller coaster of life. If I had to sum up my entire Jewish faith, my entire experience of being a Jew, what I love about it, it's the seatbelt that holds me in on the roller coaster of life. On the high highs and on the low lows, it keeps us. There's a famous question that's posed in the Talmud. You're crossing the street, imagine it, and you see to your left a funeral procession, and you see to your right a wedding party. Who gets priority? Who gets the right of way in that situation according to Judaism? Do we prioritize the tears or the laughter? Do we prioritize the joy or the sorrow? Well, the Talmud goes back and forth as it does. Is there a conclusion? Well, I think the conclusion is this, that that's life. That we live at that intersection between joy and sorrow, that we live at that very intersection being pulled in both directions at once. How many times have you found yourself at a simcha, a baby naming, a wedding? You're looking around and you're filled with joy, all the good that is felt in that moment, and yet with all that sweetness, you can't help but wonder, what about the one who's not here? And how proud they would have been. And that sweetness is always tinged with a bitter sweetness. It's why when I wish a congregant, as I have today, all of you, I hope, Shana Tova, have a sweet year. I know for so many of us, this season is sweet. It's sweet with the honey of new possibility, but it's bittersweet too. As we think back on what a year brought in terms of loss and struggle. It is the very layout of our sanctuary, Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, on one side, and on the other we all know, Ki ata imadi, for you are with me. Place for laughter, a place for tears. That's who we are. Stop for a second and think about the Jewish experience in America in the last 100 years. You have to realize something that's wild, and that is, which you don't always stop to think about, knowing who we are, how could it be that the greatest comedic minds in our country, that the great comedians that we watch, Mel Brooks and Jon Stewart and Jerry Seinfeld and Lenny Bruce and Gilda Radner and Sarah Silverman and Joan Rivers and Groucho Marx. Who did I miss? Jerry Lewis? My gosh. I'm not even getting into the writers. Not even getting into the producers. How could it be that the great comedic minds of the last 100 years come from the most persecuted people, the people who have shed more tears, the people who have known more sorrow, the people who have lived in the shadow of anti-Semitism and hatred from the very beginning, from Pharaoh to today? Where the people who brought laughter into this world? How could it be? It's wild. But that's a portrait of the Jewish genius. That's a portrait of who we are when we start every day, as we did today for the early birds who came at 9 a.m., with the words of Psalm 30. You, God, have turned my lament into dancing. You've turned my sackcloth into something that was girded with joy. It's a testament to the Jewish spirit. In a line, that's who we are. It doesn't mean we're the people who laugh just to make light of the pain of this world. It doesn't mean we minimize the seriousness of the issues our world faces. It doesn't mean we just do it to distract ourselves, but it means we find joy as a people from a place of hope. It's a testament to the Jewish spirit. Laughter and joy are what help us to face this world with strength and to transform the pain. It's why when I say at every funeral the words of Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we know as Jews, we keep walking. We don't stay in that valley. Some of us, we stay a month, we stay 6 months, we stay a year, and yeah, we have to honor that pain, but the Psalm tells us to keep walking, to remember the moments of joy that we shared with those we loved, even when it was tough, even when I do miss you so. I know ki ata imadi, for you are with me. It's a Yiddish phrase. Any Yiddishists in the crowd? Where's Ken? This Yiddish phrase that captures who we are. It's a bitterer gelächter. What's a bitterer gelächter? A laugh that starts from that place of pain and bitterness, but then transforms into something beautiful. It's a smile that peeks through the darkness, a bitterer gelächter. Not to say this world is a joke, God forbid, but because of what we've faced as a people, we know we have to have the strength to rejoice, to say Alachayim. And it's just like that generation that wept the bitterest of tears after the Shoah. I like to imagine that their tears are the rain that falls down in Yerushalayim when two Israelis are sitting in a cafe telling a joke all these years later and finding a hope, an ability to laugh. Even the jokes we tell, they reflect that spirit of who we are. Bitterer gelächter. Maybe you know the one about, this is a classic Jewish joke, because it's about the end of the world. Prominent scientists announce that as a result of some devastating occurrence, planet Earth is doomed. There's only 3 days left before Doomsday. Chief Rabbi goes on international radio. Fellow Jews, we must accept the will of God with humility. We prepare ourselves to meet our Maker. The Hasidim come on the radio. Yidden, let's do teshuvah. Let's repent from our sins. The day of judgment is upon us. The science and biology students at the University of Tel Aviv and Haifa, together at the Technion, they go on air and they say, Jews everywhere, we've heard the terrible news. We can't waste any time. We have exactly 3 days to learn how to live underwater, how to breathe underwater. My friends, as Jews, we know what it means, especially looking back on a year, to live underwater. What it means to find, if we can, in our machzor, in our Torah, in our community, a breath that sustains us when we feel like life has just thrown us underwater. The joy of Jewish living, to me, it's my oxygen. I couldn't imagine living without all of this. And I hope if 5783 wakes you up to anything, it wakes you up to the power of what we do here in that way. Laughter and tears. They're the story of the Torah reading and the Haftarah that we just finished. Right? Chana, who was following the Haftarah? Chana, who feels isolated, who feels that no one is with her in her pain. She can't give birth. She calls out to God. She cries out to God. Our sages tell us, actually, that's the first moment of true, honest prayer. You should model your prayer life after Hannah in her authentic tears. And they go a step further. They say when you hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, you're not just hearing the shofar. What you hear are the cries of Hannah. You hear in those blasts her tears. And the tears of anyone, anywhere, any Jew throughout the world who comes into this holiday needing to be heard in their pain. Then there's the story of Sarah, which in its way is similar. She's struggling. She needs help from God, but she gets that help and she chooses to name her son Yitzchak. She chooses to name him laughter of all things, because for her, joy, it peeked through the sadness. For her, and it doesn't always happen, she was able to recognize a blessing. For us, it could be a year after a painful situation. It could be 5 years. It could be 10 years. It could be 50 years after. But our Torah asks us to try to find, even in that tough situation, the ability to be uplifted, to know that it came to us, not to minimize it, but to build something in here, a strength and a joy. It was the wisest Jew who ever lived, Kohelet, who said, Et livchot ve'et lischok. It's a time to cry and a time to laugh. If other faiths speak about Stoicism, they speak about holding it in. They say things like tears are a sign of weakness. Don't bring your vulnerability to shul. They say things like laughter, that's a sign of doubt. It's a sign of a lack of faith. It's a sign of frivolity. Don't bring your laughter. Well, we're the opposite. We're the people who know. When you come here, you bring your full heart to what you do. We need that reminder. Maybe you know the Baal Shem Tov, founder of Hasidic Judaism. It said his machzor, his prayer book, it was stained with two things. You know what they were? Tears and a little wax from the Havdalah candle. We need that. As conservative Jews, we need that. We get a little too stuffy in here. We need to know what it means that when we strike our hearts on the holidays, we do it not to beat ourselves up. We do it to get our Jewish hearts beating again, to wake up to the release and the power of what's here. Psychologists have been speaking about it, that our world is a world of holding things in. You want to laugh? What do? You go to a funny movie. Fine. You want to cry? You hire a therapist. Fine. That's important too. But as Jews, we can't forget the power of what we do in this space. When someone comes on a Friday night and they shed a tear over saying the mourner's Kaddish, when someone comes on a Friday night and we share a joke that's not appropriate to tell on the bima in the back of the room and it fills them with comfort, well, that's real. You can't get that from a podcast or from a movie or even from a good therapist. That's why when people ask me, why be Jewish? They ask me that. Why stay a member of the shul? People ask me. They ask me, why come here at all? I can watch it. I can listen to a good Jewish podcast. I can go on Amazon and order a Jewish book. Great. And those things are important. But I'll tell you why it matters to come here on a holiday or on a Shabbat or during the week, day in and day out. You come here because all those things, as good as they are, they don't laugh with you. They don't cry with you. They won't be there to pick you up when you need to be picked up. They won't be there to hold you. But we will. It's just too quiet in shuls these days. And that's a problem. Religion in America, all of it, it's just too quiet. This sanctuary is a sanctuary where tears have fallen, where laughter has echoed from the walls. We need to be a part of that. We need to wake this place up in the ways that our ancestors did, in the ways you could go all the way back to Hannah and to Sarah. So I'll tell you, my friends, one other story about why this matters so much. There's a rabbi who wanted to give strength to a congregant when that congregant was in a deep place of need. He invited the congregant, come on Rosh Hashanah, come. You can pray there. And the congregant said, nah, no need. I haven't been in shul in so long. I'll call out to God from where I am. God will hear me. Whatever I have to ask of God, I can ask from where I am. And the rabbi said, yeah, that's true. But maybe, just maybe, God has something to ask of you. I hope we'll take that story to heart this year too, my friends, that when you come here, you remember not just what you have to ask of God, but what God has to ask of you. And when you sit here in this place where others have laughed and cried, as a Jew, you remember that your tears are not your own tears and your laughter is not your own. It's ancient tears. They're ancient smiles. In a world of cheap laughs at bad movies, in a world where nobody's listening to the pain of one another because we're all just too darn busy, that means something more than so many realize. And I hope in 5783, we can be the people who realize that here at TBT. May we find ourselves right here in times of need and in times of joy. May we cry Jewish tears. May we laugh Jewish laughter. May we be strengthened together for a year that's blessed, that is connected and deepened through our faith, for a year that honors the past, but embraces the future, like when God calls in the middle of a sermon. For a year that is all and all that is good and filled with all that is blessed and emotionally powerful here at Temple Beth Torah. May it be a year in which we celebrate a Torah that is good and a community that is good. Shana Tova.